Alright guys, so in this video we're going to talk about merge fields, or merge tags is how Mailchimp calls them. First I'll talk about what they are and then why they're important when it comes to subscribing users to our Mailchimp. So first of all, what are merge tags? If we go to our Mailchimp account, so currently we were on the all contacts page. Let's go ahead and click on settings here. And right here you can see it says audience fields and merge tags. So let's click here. All right. So what are merge tags? Well, if you used Mailchimp or maybe some other kind of newsletter provider, you will know that these are sort of like variables. So if you, for example, have a merge tag like email, that's going to interpolate emails of all of your subscribers into your email, right? Or let's say first name. So if you put fname, so this merge tag, into somewhere into your actual newsletter, that's going to interpolate the first names of all of your subscribed users. Okay, so this is basically their purpose. Now, so far, the only reason Mailchimp allowed us to add subscribers to the newsletter is because none of our fields here, none of the merge tag fields have been marked as required. So notice here, if I go to my first name field, and by the way, all of these fields here were actually default. I did not manually create them, but you can, if you want, create new fields here. So these are all just out of the box with Mailchimp. So if we click on first name and go to edit, you will see that the required tick is not checked, right? So that means it's not required. But and none of these others are either. Like you see, last name not required, etc., etc. The only one that's always required, of course, is the actual email field, because we cannot subscribe anybody without an email. So you can see we aren't even allowed to change that, right? So let's actually do a little experiment, and we're going to see what happens when we mark a field as required. So let's take the first name field, and we're going to go to edit, and we're going to check this required field or required box. And then we'll do the same thing for the last name. Let's just do it for both. Perfect. All right, now make sure your server is still running, and let's go back to our application. So this is where we left off. Let's just refresh, and we're going to try subscribing another email. So and just before I do that, actually, let's console log our error object inside actions. So let me just do this. So in here, let's see, what do we, we want to do it right here. We actually had it from the previous lesson, so we're just going to console log error.response. Click save. Okay, and let's subscribe a new email. I'm going to say boris123@gmail.com. Subscribe. So notice we get our generic error message, and let's read more about the error in here. Okay, so notice what it says. Invalid title is invalid resource, status 400, detail your merge fields are were invalid. And then the errors are the field fname, messages please enter value, and then lname, last name, also please enter value. All right, so Mailchimp is able to detect that we have certain fields that are marked as required, and yet we're not providing that information when trying to subscribe a user, and it's not going to let us do it. Okay, so obviously to solve this issue, we would need to provide these merge fields. So let's actually do that. Let's go back to our form. We're going to add two more fields to it. first name and last name field. So I'm going to paste some code and then I'll briefly explain it here. Let's go just above our email input, and I'm going to paste this in. So all I'm doing is I'm adding two more inputs. So the first one, type of text, name is first name. The class is the same as we had for our email input. Placeholder is just first name, and we're marking it as required, so you must provide this input. And then the other one is pretty much the same as the first, except instead of first name, it's last name. Everything else is the same. All right, and one more little change I'm going to make here is this placeholder is going to be a little too long, so I'm going to remove enter your, and I'm just going to keep email address. Okay, let's save that. Okay, so this is looking good. Now let's go up to our handle submit. Actually, everything here is good. We actually have to go to our actions and extract these two additional fields from our form data that we're passing in. So let's go in here. So currently we're only getting the email from our form data. So let's go const first name equals to form data.get first name. So remember, this has to be the same as inside our name attribute here, right? It has to be spelled the same. And then we'll do the same thing with last name. So just change this to last name. Oops, that's not what I want to change. And there's one more really important thing we have to do, because right now we're actually not passing in this information into Mailchimp, right? So how do we pass these merge fields into Mailchimp? Well, let's go back to the docs, because they give us the answer. So remember, before we looked at this method to add a member to our list, right? Now, if we scroll down here, we'll see here it says merge fields. It's an optional parameter we can add to our request. Okay, so the only required ones are email address and status, right? But merge fields is an optional one we can add, and in this case we do need to add it because, of course, we just made our first name and last name required fields. So this is going to be type object, and we can actually click here to see an example of this. So it tells us a little bit about the merge fields, and then here, oops, and here we have an example, right? So here's the merge fields property, and then we have an object with key value pairs. So for our purposes, we need these two, right? So I think what I'll do is I'll just copy this. Let's go back to our code. And after subscribed, we're going to just paste, and we have to add a closing bracket here. Now let's make sure we have the same names for our merge fields. So let's go back to Mailchimp, and yeah, see, we have f name and l name, so they are the same, so that's good. We'll just keep that, and in here we have to dynamically pass in these two variables, right? So there we go. So I think we should be good. So let's test this out. We'll go back to our form. Okay, and here we're going to say Boris, let's say Smith, and then Boris123 at gmail.com. All right, here we go. Beautiful. So it all worked, right? And then if we go to our Mailchimp and click on all contacts, we should see Boris in here. And notice we now have values for the first and last name fields because we passed them in, right? And of course, you can do the same thing for any of these other fields if you want. So that's how the merge fields work, okay? I think it's really useful to know about them because, you know, if you're having issues subscribing a user, please check your merge fields. Maybe you have some required ones that you didn't know about. All right, so I think this is a good place to stop. I hope you found this video useful and you've learned the basics of working with Mailchimp API. And I will see you in the next tutorial.